Hey everyone, it's Glenn from Backblends Fish. I have a species feature video today. We're going to be looking at the Lake Tanganyikan cichlid, the Chalinochromis Brichardi, sometimes called the master jewel. I'll be showing you my breeding group and some of the methods I use to harvest these fish when I have them ready for sale. I hope you will enjoy. See you soon. The Chalinochromis Brichardi belongs to a genus with a relatively small number of fish in it. I think there's maybe 5 or 6 species last time I looked. And from a behaviour point of view, they're quite a timid fish, although as you can see here, they're fairly comfortable once you provide them with plenty of cover in the form of rockwork, and I've got a lot of fake plants in this tank, coupled up with some real plants floating. The method with these, it's very similar to working with Julies and other Neolamprologus species. You start out with maybe 6 juvenile fish and let them grow out together, and you will observe a point at which the pair might form and start to ostracise a few members of the group, and we managed to eliminate those, and it boiled down in my case to a trio of fish that function well together. Just showing a bit up on the surface there of the plant that I'm using as a sort of a form of secondary filtration that helps with the nitrate removal, and obviously provides these fish with a lot of cover. With just a simple tank, 90 by 45 by 45 or 3 by 18 by 18 in the old, running with 2 sponge filters for filtration, and coupled up with my K1 fluid bed media vessels that you see there, which just make it very overfilled. Here we see the outcome when you get it all right with some good parents and you provide the correct water parameters. I will always stress the importance of respecting the conditions that go with the lake that these African cichlids come from. Do that well with good fish and give them good food, and you're just so far along the track towards getting a result. These little fry are pretty cool in that they don't look anything like mum and dad in terms of their markings. They more closely resemble a juvenile Chalinochromis. Here's dad, and you notice he's got a bit of the hump thing going on the forehead. This guy's probably about a 3 to 4 year old fish by now, and I've seen this, you've all seen frontosis with big bumps on their head, big males, but I have noticed sometimes with even like a princess cichlid, some of the Neolamprologus develop the big buff head as they get older. Unfortunately, the adults are pretty towy in this group, so I didn't manage to get a whole lot of good quality footage of them, which is disappointing because they are quite an attractive fish, and they do have an interesting swimming habit where they kind of cruise around and hover in mid-water and look to be inspecting you with some level of interest. The group I have here probably began to breed for me at around 18 months of age. It went that quick out of the gate, but it's also possible that I missed observing some spawning in the early stages. And they've hit this sweet spot for me now where they are rolling out a spawn fairly regularly, and that's leading to these cohorts that we're looking at here at the quite distinctive size increments. The fish maintain that juvenile marking, it seems, to about 15 to 20 mil in size, and then they revert to the same sort of very pale lemon of their parents, with the customary little black mask across their eyes. It's giving rise to the common name of the masked julie. So it's nice to be able to work with a step spawning style of cichlid, whereby you can sort of leave them be for good chunks of time, and maintaining the water changes and the food is about as far as you need to go. But there comes a time when you need to start harvesting fish. We're going to kick forward now in the video to the future, where it's now time to pull this tank apart and harvest what ends up being a good number of fry. Usually I get in there when we see some that have reverted to the adult coloration. It's time to get onto it then, because they do eventually, I believe, start to pick off some of the smaller babies. So this is my tank of Chalinochromis Brichardi. I've got what I believe is an adult trio in here, and some months on since the last time I did a major pull down on this tank, we've got 3 and 4 batches of fry in here at various sizes. They seem to step breed pretty well, up to a point, and I think we're getting up to a point. I'm starting to see the odd juvenile that's maybe ready to swim off and make a claim for its own stake in the world. So today is bite the bullet day, and I'm preparing to completely drain this tank and catch as many fry as I can and set us back up for the next tranche of breeding. The algae on the front's obviously pretty unsightly, but my method with fish like this, the julies and so forth, is to leave a lot of that on there from the point of view of it providing cover and security for the fish. And I do suspect it gets to the stage where we get a ecosystem happening with microfauna that they are possibly growing, feeding and predating on, because you do often see the little fry up on the glass munching away. Now, having said that the tank looks gross, I still do water changes. I just don't necessarily always clean glass, and I'm going to try and film some scrapes down there to just show that the clarity of the water in this tank is really good. I've got the K1 fluid beds running in conjunction with sponge filtration, and all that algae and growth is helping to filter the water as well. Just in getting ready, I've obviously taken the lids off the tank. I've got my trusty black tub down here to put all the rock work and filters and whatnot into, so that it's just not dripping on the floor. And down yonder I've got myself a bucket ready to count that hopefully will be lots of fry into, and I'm running an air stone in here because this is going to be a long, slow process. I'm going to be picking through some gunk, and I don't want to risk crowding this bucket up with hopefully 100 babies and forgetting where I'm at and them having a major kill because I ran the oxygen down too low. Anyway, let's get into the next bit. This isn't going to be particularly magnificent riveting viewing. I'm going to just quickly get rid of some of this crud off the front glass so I can see what I'm doing. You can see I've got a bit of a pile of muck there that's trapping gas. It's not necessarily bad gas that I've got here, it's most likely oxygen being given off by all this
algae that I'm producing here. And because this stuff's been on the glass for quite a while, just hitting it with a scouring pad isn't really going to be that easy. It's got a sort of a form of scale or calcification about it, I guess, because of the minerals in the water, and it also tends to hang together in clumps a bit better if you carefully slice it off like this with the blade, which just helps maintain some level of visibility in that water. What I'm going to be doing in a sec is opening the drain to my tank. As you might have seen in other videos, all the tanks are plumbed to expedite water changes. I still subscribe to running individual tanks rather than the whole sub thing, just to give me the flexibility of being able to play with my water parameters if I'm trying to achieve a breeding trigger or keep a Tanganyikan fish next to a discus in my rack. It's always been my belief that some systems are great if you're breeding one particular water chemistry requirement, but not so much if you just want a tank to breed your next project in, which is what it's all about. Now I'm just going to open my valve under there to start draining this muck. I just want to see if I can get rid of a substantial little clump of this before I go dragging a net through and really making it difficult. So I'm just going to carefully walk this along with some gentle agitation and hopefully just chase the little fry out of there to the back of the tank. And now I can just carefully undo my screen and get a good amount of this crap down the drain ASAP. So we're about ready to start ripping all this rock work out. You can see a few little Brichardi here wondering what the hell's going on there. Some of the bigger ones are out having a little dart around. And it looks like we've got a few, so this hopefully will be a worthwhile effort. Righto, so my rocks are all in the tub, my filters are in the sink ready for a rinse out, and I think we're at the stage where I've now got a clear tank so that I can carefully start netting these fish out. A couple of things to think about in this circumstance. It's not a competition to see how many you can get in one net for. I'm hoping to get a count on these little guys as I'm transferring them so that I can do some calculations and forecasting on future income. So putting 50 or 60 of these in a net at once and picking them out of the crud is not necessarily that smart. A couple of things to remember with catching fish also for their safety. You don't want to be just driving them into the corners and potentially giving them a squeeze. So it's all about slow and steady, and one of the things that I'd recommend to you, if you haven't already, if you're running something like this, is the use of a fine sand as a substrate, because what it allows you to do is to actually bury the front rim of your net under there, a bit like a scallop dredge, and you can actually get in underneath the fish. They tend not to spook too much, and you get that all the way to the corner, and then just carefully lift. Your sand's going to go straight through the net, and I find it just helps catch fish quickly without causing them too much distress. Having said that, I've probably netted up a bit too much sand, so I'm going to have to get my little washing machine. Because of all that crud, like I should have got more of the muck out earlier. It's taken a little while to get that sand through because the algae and muck is clogging us somewhat. Righto, we've got a horrible net full of crud here. It's going to take some time to get through. Back in a second. So I've now got my net full of stuff in a small container of water so that I can keep those babies submerged. And now it's a matter of gunk into a rubbish tub and fry into a bucket. I'm sure most people are aware of this, but it's always important when you're handling fish to be as gentle as possible, and wet hands is always a big help. You don't want to be just abrading the slime coat or the mucus off your fish by overly rough handling. This is a job I probably only do once every 6 months for this reason. The way I run my tanks with all the gunk growing on glass is it's good for survival and so forth in the early stages, but it does come at a price at this point of the exercise. People might be thinking, why don't I run bristlenose in the tank to stay on top of all that? Well, that's probably okay if you're talking small bristlenose, but if you get some bristlenose that gets of any sort of size, they're going to get pretty belligerent about attacking any eggs that these things lay on your rocks, and you're going to end up losing yield from that aspect. So I figure that I suck this up once every 6 months, kill a couple of hours picking through muck, and then we leave it alone, come back next time. So rather than sit there watching me pick through muck, I'll switch off and we'll come back a bit later on with a tally. Okey dokey, we're about 40 minutes to an hour on from when I started picking through all that crud, and was very pleasantly surprised with the result that came. This little 50 litre holding tank, I've actually got, believe it or not, 40 of the oldest size class in those step cohorts of breeding.
So the fish we're looking at here are 35 to 40 mil long now, and just look like miniatures of the adults. They've lost that sort of blotchy markings that typify the juveniles, and we're on to little mini me's. Very cool little guys. Looking forward to getting some out into the hobby. So that was 40. I wasn't able to count these effectively. I just pulled the air stone out. Some of these are big enough to sell as well, but how many do you need to sell? So my best estimate is about 70 to 80 fish in here, which is great news. So they're going to go into a 200 litre grow out to just let them get on to getting big and being the next lot that we can make $1 off. And down here we are refilling our breeder tank, and what you'll notice down the front here is that I've still got fry. I didn't get every last fish out. One of our adults here, I think that's Dad, the biggest one maybe. I've got a trio. I don't know whether he breeds with both girls or not, but he certainly breeds with one of them. But I always leave a few of the juveniles behind, and I've obviously left them at different increments here from the batches that have happened since last we did this job. We've got some of the that saleable fish there, 3.5 centimetres. The reason I like to do that is that, I've obviously rocked these guys well doing this, and it's going to take them a few days to recover. And obviously I didn't photocopy the layout of the rock work, so I'm going to be putting new arrangement back so that Dad's got a bit of work to do to figure out his new spot, rather than just launch straight into potentially beating up those adult females. And by leaving a few of these juveniles around, hopefully they get the sense that, okay, something certainly happened, but my family's still here and I've got a job to do. That's the method that I tend to use with the Julies and anything basically where I let it breed on in a species only situation, and this biannual sort of harvesting that I'm doing here. So it was a surprisingly good number of fish we've produced for the last 6 months. That forecasting, that bookwork you do where you plan your production and your ideal returns. I was hoping to breed a couple of hundred of these in a year, and we're well on track, having done over 100 in the first 6 months. I'll turn off now and we'll have a look at the tank in a day or two when the dust has settled and I can show you Mum and Dad.
We've actually landed forward by about a month by the time I got back to filming. The fish we're looking at here are the juveniles that were in our bucket on the sink, and these are the larger ones that are around 4 centimetres by now. There's a nice even group here. You'll notice they look a little bit more pearly white, and I think that's to do with being in a tank with the blue painted background rather than the black of the other tank, and fairly clean sand. And finally, here we are back where it all started. I must apologise for the horrible glare on the glass. I just had so much trouble filming these fish under sort of normal behaviour circumstances, and every time I put up the shroud around them or twitched off other lights, it just seemed to spook them. I did want to get a bit of footage like this where you can see the kind of graceful, serene aspect of this fish, and they do make a lovely display tank and a fantastic sort of species only breeding project. So yeah, summarising the steps: get yourself some juveniles and set up a tank like this with plenty of rocks and flower pots, and I've got bits of PVC pipe in there and shell and so forth. Plenty of options for them to seek out their ideal territory. Give them good food, give them good water, give them the love, and be patient, and I'm pretty sure you'll get the joy of breeding what is a pretty nice little cichlid from Tanganyika. So at this stage I'd like to thank you for hanging in, if you're still with me and watching this video. Hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please give us a like and subscribe to my channel and click the bell for notifications of future